The human didn't scream. He didn't hesitate. He simply ended 5 lives worth of confidence in 10 seconds. I have seen a lot of stupid decisions in my 3 cycles at the Galactic Military Academy, but what happened in advanced combat theory on that particular Tuesday afternoon, that takes the prize for the single dumbest thing I have ever witnessed. And I am a 4-armed Vexillian who once watched my roommate try to pet a Corinthian battlehound, so the bar was already pretty high. My name is Krelton, and before that day, I thought I understood the universe pretty well. I mean, I had top marks in xenobiology. I could name 73 different species just by their smell, and I had never failed a single tactical assessment. So when I tell you that I had absolutely no idea what humans were actually capable of, you have to understand how shocking that is for someone like me. The day started normal enough. Boring even. I shuffled into Professor Helix's classroom with my datapad tucked under my third arm, nodding to a few classmates as I found my usual seat near the back. The room smelled like recycled air and the faint tang of cleaning solution. Typical. Tuesday mornings always dragged because Helix had this incredibly annoying habit of droning on about theoretical combat scenarios that would never ever happen in real life. That is when I noticed Owen Reeves sitting 3 rows ahead of me. Owen was human. You know, one of those weird bipedal mammals from that little blue planet way out in the unfashionable end of the galaxy. Earth, I think they call it. Anyway, Owen was the kind of student you barely noticed. Average height for his species, maybe around 6 feet tall, with brown hair that always looked like he had just rolled out of his bunk. He wore his uniform neat enough, kept his head down, and never caused problems. Honestly, if you had asked me to describe him before that day, I would have probably said something like, "Oh yeah, that quiet guy who sits in the middle and never talks, completely unremarkable," which is exactly why what happened next made absolutely no sense. See, our academy has bullies just like any other school in the galaxy. It is inevitable when you shove 1,000 different species together and tell them they are all training to be warriors. The worst of them were this group of 5 idiots who thought their physical advantages meant they owned the place. Thorek was a Bronthan, built like a walking tank with gray scaly skin. Brixus was a Kellian with mandibles that clicked when he laughed. Vila was a Cerulean female with 6 arms and an attitude problem. Zenton was another Bronthan, Thorek's cousin or something. And Quinn was a Dravian with those creepy segmented eyes that never blink. These 5 had been making life miserable for smaller students since the semester started. Nothing too serious, just enough to make people uncomfortable. Shoving in hallways, stealing datapads, that sort of thing. Professor Helix knew about it. Everyone knew about it, but nobody did anything because, well, they were big and mean and most people did not want the trouble. So there we were, 15 minutes into Helix's lecture about multi-species combat formations. When Thorek decided it would be hilarious to target Owen, I watched it happen in what felt like slow motion. Thorek stood up from his seat, grabbed his lunch tray from under his desk and walked over to where Owen was sitting. Owen was taking notes, completely focused on his datapad, not paying attention to anything else. Thorek looked back at his buddies. They were all grinning, waiting for the show. Then Thorek just dumped the entire tray right onto Owen's head. Blue gel paste splattered across Owen's hair, sliding down his face and onto his uniform. Chunks of what I think was Regellian protein mash clung to his shoulders. The whole tray, everything just dumped on him like he was some kind of garbage disposal. And the smell, oh ancestors, the smell of that cafeteria slop was absolutely rancid. The classroom went dead silent. Now, let me explain something about these 5 bullies. Thorek alone weighed about 400 pounds of pure muscle and bone plating. He could bend duralloy bars with his bare hands. I had seen him lift a transport speeder once just to show off. Brixus was nearly 7 feet tall with reflexes fast enough to snatch insects out of the air. Vila had combat training from her home world where they start fighting practically from birth. Zenton was just as big as Thorek, maybe even meaner. And Quinn, that creepy little Dravian, had venom sacs in his jaw that could paralyze most species in seconds. These were not people you messed with. These were not people you even looked at wrong. They had sent 3 students to the medical bay already this semester, and the academy administration had done absolutely nothing about it because their families had connections, money, influence, all that garbage that lets bullies get away with being bullies. Owen Reeves was a human. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely 20 cycles since first contact. They were small compared to most military species, fragile looking, with soft skin and no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor plating, just soft, squishy mammals who somehow managed to build spaceships. Most of us figured they got lucky, caught the attention of a more advanced species who felt sorry for them or something. So when Owen stood up slowly, food dripping from his uniform in long disgusting globs, I expected him to do what anyone sensible would do. Apologize, clean himself up, maybe report it later to someone who would not care. That is what everyone did when these 5 targeted them, but Owen did not do that. He stood there, perfectly still, and the way he moved made something in my gut twist. It was too controlled, too deliberate. Every muscle in his body seemed to coil up like a spring being compressed. Professor Hallex finally looked up from his lecture notes, his 3 eyes widening as he realized what had happened. Now let us all just calm down here, Hallex said, his voice cracking slightly. Thorak, return to your seat immediately. Owen, perhaps you should go clean yourself up and But Owen was not listening to Hallex. He was staring at Thorak with these eyes that had gone completely flat. No anger, no fear, nothing. Just empty, cold, like looking into the void of space itself. And something about that look made every single one of my survival instincts start screaming at me to run. Thorak laughed. His buddies laughed. They had no idea what was coming. Nobody did. What happened next took 10 seconds. I know this because the Academy security footage was reviewed frame by frame afterward, and they timed it precisely. 10 seconds. That is how long it took for Owen Reeves to systematically dismantle 5 of the most dangerous bullies at the Galactic Military Academy. I am going to walk you through it, because even now, even after watching the footage 24 times, I still cannot quite believe what I saw with my own 4 eyes. Second one. Owen moved. Not like a person moves, but like something else entirely. His right hand shot forward faster than I could track, fingers extended and rigid. The strike hit Thorak directly in the throat, right where his primary air passage was located. Now, Thorak had thick skin, layers of protective tissue that should have absorbed a hit like that. Should have. But Owen's hand sank in like he was punching through paper, and Thorak's eyes bulged out so far I thought they might pop right out of his skull. The big Bronton made this wet choking sound and staggered backward, clawing at his neck. Second 2. Thorak was still falling. Owen had already moved past him. Brixus was coming in from the side, mandibles spread wide, probably planning to grab Owen in a hold. Big mistake. Owen pivoted on his left foot, caught Brixus's incoming arm at the wrist, and twist. I heard the joint pop from 3 rows away. It sounded like someone snapping a piece of dried wood. Brixus shrieked, this high-pitched clicking sound that made everyone in the room flinch. Second 3. Owen still had Brixus's arm. He yanked it down while simultaneously driving his other elbow up. The back of Brixus's head met the desk in front of him with a sickening crunch. The desk, made from reinforced composite materials designed to withstand most impacts, actually cracked down the middle. Brixus went limp immediately, purple blood streaming from his mandibles and the back of his skull. He slumped to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. Second 4. Vila was screaming something in her native language, all 6 of her arms reaching for Owen. She was fast. I will give her that. She had him by the shoulders with 2 arms, going for a grapple that should have immobilized him completely. But Owen dropped his weight, bent at the knees, and somehow slipped out of her grip like he was coated in oil. As he came back up, his elbow drove backward into Vila's solar plexus. Second 5. Vila's face went from angry red to pale green in an instant. All 6 of her arms went slack. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air, trying desperately to pull oxygen into lungs that had just been completely shut down. She collapsed forward, and Owen stepped aside casually, letting her crash face first into the floor where she curled into a ball, gasping and wheezing. Second 6. Zenton finally processed what was happening. His cousin was down, 2 others were down, and this human who should have been easy prey was somehow winning. Zenton roared, that deep Bronton battle cry that usually makes smaller species freeze in terror, and charged forward like a freight transport, 400 pounds of muscle and rage coming in at full speed. Second 7. Owen did not dodge. He stepped into the charge, which seemed completely insane, and at the last possible instant he dropped low and drove his boot into Zenton's leading knee. Not a kick, but a stomp. All of Owen's body weight concentrated into that one point of impact. Zenton's knee bent sideways, not backward like it was supposed to, but sideways with another one of those horrible popping sounds that made my stomach turn. Ligaments tore, bone separated from bone, and Zenton went down screaming. Second 8. Zenton hit the ground still screaming, clutching his destroyed knee. Owen stepped over him without even looking down, his eyes already locked onto the last target. Quinn had backed up against the wall, his segmented eyes wide with something I had never seen in them before. Fear. Real. Genuine. Primal fear. Second 9. Quinn bolted. He turned and tried to run for the door, those long Dravian legs pumping as fast as they could. He almost made it. Almost. But Owen was faster. He covered the distance between them in 3 long strides, grabbed Quinn by the back of his uniform collar and yanked him backward. Quinn's legs flew out from under him. Second 10. Owen slammed Quinn into the floor, not just dropped him but actively drove him down with force. Quinn's head bounced off the floor plating once, twice, and then he went completely still, unconscious before he even understood what had happened. 10 seconds. 5 bullies. All down. All broken. Owen stood there in the middle of the classroom, breathing steady and controlled, food still dripping from his hair, and looked around at the carnage he had created. His expression had not changed once. Still flat. Still calm. Still empty. Professor Halleck stood frozen at the front of the room, his mouth hanging open, his 3 eyes blinking in completely different rhythms because his brain could not process what it had just witnessed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. We just stared. Campus security arrived approximately 45 seconds after the fight ended. 45 seconds of absolute silence where nobody in that classroom dared to move or speak. We all just sat there, staring at Owen Reeves, who stood perfectly still in the center of what looked like a war zone. Food still dripped from his uniform. His breathing remained even and controlled. He did not look angry, did not look satisfied, did not look anything at all. He just waited. When the security team burst through the door, weapons drawn, they stopped cold. The lead officer, a massive Corinthian named Vex, took in the scene with his 4 eyes, and his weapon actually dipped toward the floor. 5 students were down. Thorak was on his knees, still gasping for air, his face turning an alarming shade of purple. Brixus was unconscious in a spreading pool of his own blood. Vila was curled up, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to breathe. Zenton was writhing in agony, his knee bent at an angle that made several students look away. Quinn was not moving at all. What in the name of the founders happened here? Vex demanded, his translator crackling slightly. Professor Halleck finally found his voice. There was, an altercation. A student, they spilled his lunch and then he moved so fast I could not. I tried to stop it, but he was babbling, his 3 eyes still blinking out of sync, his hands shaking as he gestured uselessly at the carnage. Owen spoke for the first time since the fight began. His voice was calm, measured, almost polite. They assaulted me, sir. I defended myself. It is all on the security footage if you need confirmation. The medical team arrived 30 seconds later, rushing in with anti-grav stretchers and emergency equipment. I watched from my seat, my 4 arms gripping my desk so hard I thought I might crack it. A Venlaxian medic with 6 tentacles went to Thorak first, scanning him with a medical tricorder. Her color shifted from professional blue to alarmed yellow. Crushed trachea. Severe swelling. He needs emergency surgery now, she signaled her team, and they loaded Thorak onto a stretcher. He was still making these horrible wheezing sounds. Another medic knelt beside Brixus, checking his vitals. Severe concussion. Fractured skull. Multiple broken mandibles. Internal bleeding. Get him to ICU immediately. The medic examining Vila was slightly less panicked but no less concerned. Complete respiratory paralysis, likely from impact trauma to the diaphragm. She will recover but needs monitoring. Zenton's injury made even the experienced combat medics wince. Total knee destruction. Ligaments torn. Patella shattered. Possible nerve damage. He is going to need reconstructive surgery and months of rehabilitation. Quinn required the least immediate intervention, but the diagnosis was still serious. Concussion. Possible spinal trauma from impact. We need to stabilize his neck before moving him. 5 stretchers, 5 students who had walked into class thinking they owned the place, now being rushed to the intensive care unit with injuries that would take months to heal. Some might never fully recover. I looked around the classroom at my fellow students. We were all thinking the same thing. I could see it in their faces. How did a human do this? How did this soft, fragile-looking mammal from some backwater planet systematically destroy 5 of the Academy's most physically dangerous students in less time than it takes to sneeze? A Thalorian girl 2 seats over was crying quietly, her antenna drooping. A Krellian male had all his protective plates fully extended, a fear response he probably was not even aware of. My own hearts were hammering in my chest, all 3 of them beating at different rhythms because my body could not decide if it should prepare to fight or run. Professor Helix approached Owen slowly. like he was approaching a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. "Owen, I need you to... Oh, please remain here. Security will need to take your statement. And perhaps you should also seek medical attention. You were, after all, assaulted first and—" "I am fine, Professor," Owen said quietly. He looked down at his ruined uniform, food still clinging to the fabric. "Though I would appreciate permission to clean up once security has finished with me." "Yes, of course. Naturally, by all means," Halleck stammered. Owen looked around the classroom then, making eye contact with several students. Most looked away immediately. When his gaze passed over me, I felt my breathing stop completely. This was not a human. This was an apex predator in disguise. The Academy board spent 3 full days reviewing the security footage. 3 days of watching those 10 seconds over and over again from every available camera angle. They brought in combat analysts, xenobiologists, and even military consultants from 5 different species. Everyone wanted to understand how a human, a species barely out of their own solar system, had just demolished 5 experienced fighters without breaking a sweat. I could not stop thinking about it. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Owen's empty expression, heard those horrible popping sounds, watched those bullies drop like their strings had been cut. So I did what any terrified student would do. I started research. The Academy Library has one of the most comprehensive xenological databases in the known galaxy. Thousands of species, millions of data points, all cross-referenced and cataloged. I pulled up everything I could find on humans and their home planet Earth. What I found made my blood run cold. Earth is classified as a Class 9 death world. Let me explain what that means, because I did not fully understand it before. The Galactic classification system ranks planets on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how hostile they are to life. Class 1 planets are paradise worlds with gentle weather, abundant resources, and practically no natural predators. Most spacefaring species come from Class 3 or Class 4 worlds, comfortable places where evolution did not have to be quite so vicious. Class 9 means that almost everything on the planet is actively trying to kill you. Earth has weather systems that can level entire cities. Hurricanes with winds over 200 miles per hour. Tornadoes that tear through landscapes like they are made of paper. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that bury entire regions in ash and lava. Tsunamis that wash away coastlines. And that is just the weather. The planet is covered in venomous creatures. Spiders, snakes, jellyfish, frogs, fish, even some mammals. Predators that can crush bones with their jaws. Cats that hunt in coordinated packs. Bears that weigh over half a ton of pure muscle. Microscopic organisms that can kill you in hours. Plants that can poison you just by touching them. Humans evolved on this nightmare planet, not as the biggest predator, not as the fastest, not as the strongest. They evolved as persistence hunters. I found a research paper written by a Vanlaxian anthropologist who had studied human biology for 20 cycles. The findings were horrifying. Humans have something called an adrenaline response. When threatened, their bodies dump chemicals into their bloodstream that increase strength, speed up reaction time, dull pain receptors, and sharpen focus. They literally become more dangerous when they are hurt or scared. Their skeletal structure is reinforced with something called compact bone that can absorb tremendous impact. Their joints are designed for explosive movements in multiple directions. Their hands, those soft-looking appendages with no claws, can deliver strikes with focused force that exceeds species twice their size. But the most terrifying thing I learned: humans are endurance predators. On their home world, they used to hunt prey by simply chasing it until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can regulate their body temperature through sweat, something almost no other predator can do efficiently. They can run for hours, days even, while their prey overheats and dies. They do not have to be faster than you. They just have to be able to follow you until you cannot run anymore. I accessed military records next, the ones that are supposed to be restricted but that everyone knows how to find if you look hard enough. Human military history is absolutely insane. They have been fighting wars against each other for their entire recorded history, thousands of years of constant brutal combat. They have developed weapons that can sterilize entire planets. They have tactics and strategies refined over millennia of killing each other. One report from a joint training exercise between human Marines and Bronthan shock troops made me physically ill. The Bronthans, the same species as Thorak and Zenton, are considered some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Big, strong, aggressive, well-trained. The human Marines were outnumbered 3 to 1 in the exercise. The humans won decisively. The after-action report noted that human soldiers displayed unnerving aggression. exceptional tactical flexibility, and disturbing capacity for violence. One Bronthan commander was quoted as saying, "They fight like they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. It is not natural." I found combat footage from the human-Krellian border conflict 2 cycles ago. A single human squad held off an entire Krellian battalion for 6 hours. 6 hours. When reinforcements finally arrived, all 8 humans were still fighting. 3 were wounded badly enough that they should have been unconscious from shock. They kept fighting anyway. There was a medical report attached to that file. It detailed how human medics had to physically restrain their own wounded soldiers to treat them because the soldiers kept trying to return to combat. Their adrenaline response was so strong that they could not feel their injuries. One human had a piece of shrapnel embedded in his lung and was still firing his weapon accurately. I sat back from my research terminal, all 4 of my hands trembling. We let humans into the Galactic Military Academy. We put them in classes with other species. We treated them like they were just another member of the community, soft and harmless and unremarkable. We were wrong. So terribly, catastrophically wrong. Owen Reeves had not lost control in that classroom. He had not gone berserk or had some kind of breakdown. What we witnessed was a human operating at maybe 30% of their actual combat capability, using skills and instincts honed over millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill them every single day, and he had held back. The disciplinary hearing took place in the Academy's administrative chamber, a large circular room with seating arranged in tiers around a central platform. I was called as a witness along with 15 other students who had been in the classroom. The board consisted of 7 administrators from different species, all wearing their formal robes, all trying very hard to look stern and authoritative instead of terrified. Owen walked in wearing a fresh uniform, his hair neatly combed, his posture relaxed. He stood on the central platform under the lights and waited patiently while the charges were read. Assault on 5 fellow students resulting in severe injuries requiring hospitalization. The way they phrased it made it sound like Owen had attacked unprovoked. Administrator Quillix, a Venlaxian with deep purple coloring, spoke first. His tentacles were coiled tight against his body, a sign of extreme nervousness. "Cadet Reeves, you stand accused of using excessive force against fellow students. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, sir," Owen said calmly. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. "No hesitation, no fear. The evidence shows that you inflicted devastating injuries on 5 individuals in approximately 10 seconds. Do you deny this?" "No, sir. I do not deny it. They assaulted me first. I defended myself." Administrator Threxis, a Korathian female, leaned forward, her 4 eyes narrowing. "Defended yourself. Cadet, you sent 5 students to intensive care. Thorac required emergency surgery. Zenton may never regain full mobility in his leg. How can you possibly claim this was defense?" Owen met her gaze without flinching. "With respect, Administrator, I used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the immediate threats to my safety. All 5 individuals were larger than me, stronger than me, and had demonstrated violent intent. I responded proportionally to ensure they could not continue their attack." "Proportionally?" Quillix's color shifted to an alarmed yellow. "You call that proportional?" "Yes, sir, I do." Owen's expression remained neutral. "If I had wanted to use excessive force, all 5 of them would be dead. I could have crushed Thorax's windpipe completely instead of bruising it. I could have driven Brixus's mandibles into his brain instead of breaking them. I could have ruptured Vila's diaphragm instead of just stunning it. I could have snapped Zenton's femur instead of dislocating his knee, and I could have broken Quinn's neck instead of just giving him a concussion." The entire chamber went silent. Dead. Absolute silence. I watched as the 7 board members exchanged glances, their fear no longer masked by professionalism. They finally understood what I had learned in my research. Owen had not been fighting at full capacity. He had been showing restraint. Administrator Jexus, an elderly Thalorian, cleared his throat nervously. "You're saying you held back?" "Yes, sir. Significantly. I was taught that the goal of self-defense is to stop the threat, not kill. So I stopped the threat." More silence. I could hear my own heart's beating in my chest. The board deliberated for less than 20 minutes. When they returned, Quillix read the decision, his tentacles still coiled tightly. "After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this board finds that Cadet Reeves acted in legitimate self-defense against an unprovoked attack. The 5 students who initiated the assault are hereby expelled from the Academy, effective immediately. Cadet Reeves is cleared of all charges but is issued a formal warning to exercise extreme caution in future physical confrontations." Owen nodded once. "Understood, sir. Thank you." As he walked out of the chamber, every single administrator watched him go with the same expression on their faces. Not anger, not disapproval, but something much more primal: fear. Pure, instinctive fear of an apex predator walking among prey. 3 weeks have passed since the incident, and the Galactic Military Academy is a very different place now. Word spread fast, faster than light-speed communication, faster than gossip usually travels. Every student, every instructor, every staff member knows what happened in advanced combat theory. They know what Owen Reeves did in 10 seconds. The human cadets, all 23 of them enrolled this semester, are treated very differently now. Students move out of their way in hallways. Nobody takes the seats next to them in the cafeteria. Conversations stop when they enter rooms. It is not quite fear, not quite respect, but something in between. Recognition. Maybe. Acknowledgement that we had been catastrophically wrong about what they were capable of. Owen went back to being his quiet, unremarkable self. He sits in the same seat in class, takes his notes on his datapad, keeps his head down, but now there is a 3-seat buffer around him at all times. Nobody gets close. Nobody bothers him. Nobody even looks at him for too long. I see him sometimes in the library, reading tactical manuals or studying xenobiology texts. He nods politely if our eyes meet. I nod back, my forearms suddenly feeling inadequate. He is still polite, still calm, still seemingly harmless, but I know better now. We all do. Humans are not the soft, fragile newcomers we thought they were. They are apex predators from a nightmare planet wrapped in deceptively vulnerable skin, walking among us with that quiet confidence that comes from being the thing that everything else runs from. They climbed to the top of a Class 9 death world by being tougher, meaner, and more persistent than everything that tried to kill them, and we invited them to join the galactic community thinking we were doing them a favor. The joke, it turns out, was on us. So here is my advice, from one student to another, from someone who learned this lesson the hard way by watching 5 bullies get dismantled in 10 seconds. If you ever encounter a human, and they seem quiet and harmless and unremarkable, remember this: that is exactly what an apex predator looks like when it does not consider you a threat. Do not give them a reason to change their mind. Do not spill their lunch. Do not underestimate them. And for the love of all the founders in the galaxy, do not ever make the catastrophically stupid mistake of thinking that just because they do not have claws or fangs or armor plating, they cannot absolutely ruin your entire existence before you even realize what is happening. Trust me on this. I watched it happen, and I never want to see it again.